thought a simple weekend getaway could turn into something straight out of a nightmare. My friends and I rented a secluded beach house in Outer Banks, North Carolina, thinking it would be the perfect spot to escape city life. The house looked beautiful in the pictures online. Whitewashed walls, large windows facing the ocean, and a wooden deck that stretched along the sand. The listing promised isolation and privacy, and we were sold. The drive down was uneventful, the sun dipping low over the horizon as we approached the rental. The moment we pulled into the driveway, a strange unease settled over me. There was no one else around, no neighbors, just the sound of waves and the wind through the dunes. It should have been peaceful, but something about the house felt off. The first night was quiet. We set up a bonfire on the deck, laughed, and drank, trying to ignore the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach. When it got dark, I noticed something strange through the living room window. A figure, standing at the edge of the beach, perfectly still, just staring at the house. I pointed it out to my friends, but by the time anyone looked, it was gone. Probably someone walking along the shore, one of them said, brushing it off, but the seed of fear was planted. Around midnight, I was the first to wake up. I was restless, tossing and turning in the guest bedroom. I heard faint creaking upstairs, like footsteps across the floorboards. I thought maybe it was the house settling, but then I heard a whisper. It was soft, almost inaudible, but it was there. My name. Michael. It sounded drawn out, distorted, like the wind itself was forming words. I froze. My phone was in the other room, so I grabbed the baseball bat we had brought for fun and slowly opened the bedroom door. The hallway was empty, dark, the only light coming from the moon streaming through the living room windows. I stepped into the hallway, and that's when I saw the marks. On the walls, scratch marks, long and deep, like claws running vertically. They hadn't been there before. My heart was pounding. I called out, but only the ocean answered. The hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. I decided to check the front door. It was locked, deadbolt and everything. I even checked the windows. No sign of forced entry. Whoever, or whatever, it was inside. The next day we joked about it, trying to shake off the fear. But at night, things escalated. The whispers returned, louder this time, echoing through the halls. Doors slammed shut on their own. We found footprints in the sand on the deck that led nowhere, just stopping at the edge of the house, facing the ocean. One night I woke to the sound of scratching right above me in the ceiling. I went to the attic, flashlight in hand. The door was old, but I swore it had been locked. I pushed it open, my light cutting through the darkness. And the smell hit me first. Rotting wood, dampness, and something metallic. The attic was empty, but on the floor there were dozens of small hand-sized depressions in the dust, as if someone or something had been pacing in a circle for hours. We tried to leave the next morning, but the car wouldn't start. Not dead battery, just nothing. It was like the house itself refused to let us go. That night I stayed awake in the living room while the others tried to sleep, clutching the bat. The whispers came again, this time calling all our names in unison, shrill and urgent. Then came the footsteps, running, not walking, across the deck outside. I ran to the window and the sight made my blood run cold. Shadows. Dozens of them moving along the beach, circling the house, appearing and disappearing as if the darkness itself was alive. We didn't sleep. None of us could. By the third night, reality began to bend. The windows no longer reflected the outside correctly. Sometimes I'd see figures standing right behind us in the glass, but when I spun around, there was nothing. The air grew colder, damp, and heavy. I started noticing small things. Objects moving slightly when we weren't looking, doors slightly ajar we had left locked, a faint dripping sound from the ceiling, even though there was no leak. On the fourth night, it reached its peak. I was in the kitchen getting water when I heard laughter, a low, guttural laugh that wasn't human echoing through the house. I froze. The kitchen door to the deck swung open violently, slamming against the wall, and I saw it. Something standing at the edge of the deck. Tall, impossibly thin, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. It didn't move like a human. It glided, bending unnaturally, its head tilting in ways that shouldn't be possible. I screamed. My friends came running, and when they saw it, the thing disappeared. We packed immediately. I don't even remember grabbing everything. The car started without a problem this time, as if the house had released us, but I didn't look back. On the drive away, I dared to glance once. There, in the living room window, the tall figure was standing, watching us leave, perfectly still. We never spoke of it again, and we never returned. But sometimes late at night, when the wind howls along the shore or when I see the Outer Banks on a travel show, I can swear I feel eyes on me. And I remember those whispers calling my name from that cursed beach house. I've done some research since then. The house had a history. Dating back to the early 1900s, it was built over what used to be a small burial ground for shipwreck victims. Locals whispered about disappearances and strange sounds, but the rental company never mentioned it. I don't know what we encountered, but whatever it wasn't human, and it wasn't gone. I can still hear it sometimes when the wind hits just right. I never believed in the supernatural until I spent a weekend at a rental house in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The place looked ordinary enough. 2 stories, faded white shingles, a small deck overlooking the beach, but the listing had a warning I ignored. Guests often report strange sounds at night. At first, I laughed it off. It seemed like the kind of tagline vacation rentals use to make their properties sound spooky. But that first night, the laughter died on my lips. The house was silent when I arrived. The only sound, the rhythmic crashing of waves. I unpacked quickly and went out on the deck to watch the sunset. The ocean was calm, serene, but something about the shadows of the dunes made me uneasy. I felt like I was being watched, but the beach was empty. That night, I set up the bedroom for sleeping, trying to ignore the faint whispers I thought were the wind. Just the wind, I told myself repeatedly, but it didn't sound like wind. It sounded like soft murmurs, almost like people speaking just beyond comprehension. Around midnight, I woke to a tapping noise. At first, I thought it was the window, but when I got up, the sound wasn't coming from outside, it was coming from inside the walls. I pressed my ear against the plaster, and then I heard it clearly. Voices whispering my name. Anna, Anna. They were soft, almost intimate, but the way they repeated made my skin crawl. I ran out of the room to the living area. The whispers stopped immediately, replaced by the loud creaking floorboards upstairs. I went to check the second floor, flashlight trembling in my hand. The master bedroom door opened slowly, though I had locked it earlier. Inside, the room was empty, but on the bed, there were small indentations, like someone had been kneeling there, staring at the corner of the room. I spun around, shining the flashlight, and the shadows in the corner seemed to twist unnaturally, elongating beyond any logical shape. I backed out, heart racing, and that's when I noticed the footprints. Small, wet footprints on the wooden floor, leading from the bed to the open window, then stopping abruptly. I checked outside. Nothing. The sand was smooth, undisturbed. The following night, I wasn't alone. I had convinced my friend Mark to join me after my initial panic, thinking having someone there would help. But the house didn't care about logic. Around 2 a.m., we both woke to the sound of the back door slamming repeatedly, though we had double-checked it was locked. The whispering returned, louder this time, circling the rooms, coming from all directions. I swear I could hear footsteps pacing above us on the attic floor, even though there was no attic access from inside. Mark tried to rationalize it. It's probably rats or the wind messing with the shutters. But then we heard it, a low, guttural laugh echoing from the kitchen. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't human, more like the sound of something emerging from deep underwater. We went to check, and the kitchen lights flickered violently. The refrigerator door swung open and slammed shut on its own. On the counter, wet handprints had appeared, smeared in a pattern that almost looked like they were reaching for us. I tried recording on my phone, thinking maybe we could capture something concrete. But the moment the whispering started again, the battery died. All our electronics failed. Phones, cameras, even the lights. By morning, the house looked normal again, as if nothing had happened. But we could still hear faint scratching and whispering in the walls, soft enough to make us question our sanity. The final night, it escalated beyond fear. The ocean outside the house roared violently, even though the weather was calm. Shadows moved in impossible ways across the deck. The whispers became words, threats, demands, telling us to leave, and sometimes just repeating our deepest fears. I swear I saw figures standing in the living room mirror behind us, faces pale and expressionless, watching silently. We tried to run, but the doors seemed farther than before, the hallways stretching unnaturally. It was as if the house had warped around us, trapping us inside a nightmare. Eventually, we fled through the back door, sand burning our feet as we sprinted toward the road. When we glanced back, the windows were black, empty, as if the house had swallowed everything inside it. Even today, I get chills thinking about that place. I did some research later. Apparently, the house had been built on reclaimed land where dozens of ships had run aground in the 1800s, and many sailors had drowned. Locals whispered about the souls that never left, the ones who roamed the beaches at night, drawn to anyone who dared stay in that house. It's been years, but I still wake at night hearing whispers, feeling watched, imagining shadows shifting just beyond my vision. I never went back to Cape Cod. Some things are better left alone, and that house was alive in a way that defied explanation. I will never forget the sensation of being surrounded by something unseen, something patient, waiting for us to slip up. I thought I had seen it all, the strange houses, the isolated beaches, the warnings and reviews that I always ignored, but nothing prepared me for the rental house we booked in Seaside, Oregon. From the moment we arrived, it felt like the place was alive. The house sat atop jagged cliffs overlooking the Pacific, battered by constant waves, its exterior gray and weathered, windows reflecting the ocean like dark, unblinking eyes. The listing described it as quaint and secluded, but the moment I stepped onto the porch, I felt a presence, a weight pressing down, making it hard to breathe. We unpacked quickly, trying to ignore the unease. The first night, the wind was loud, shaking the windows and sending sand crashing against the walls. I was alone for a while my friends explored the beach. Around midnight, I heard the first sound, a deep guttural groaning coming from below the house, where the cliffs met the rocks. I assumed it was the waves, but the groans had rhythm, almost like a chant, and occasionally a distorted voice whispered my name. I froze, listening, certain that the sound was directed at me, following me around the house. That night, I couldn't sleep. The lights flickered constantly and shadows moved in ways that didn't make sense. I saw a figure standing at the edge of the deck, silhouetted against the moonlight, impossibly tall and thin, limbs bent in wrong angles. I blinked, and it vanished. When I told my friends, they laughed nervously, but I could tell they were uneasy too. By the second night, things escalated. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, pounded through the floors above us, though the upstairs rooms were empty. Doors slammed, walls thumped, and the windows vibrated as if something was trying to break in. Around 2 a.m., the house seemed to breathe. The air shifted, heavy and salty, carrying with it a voice that wasn't human. It whispered warnings, threats, and sometimes promises in tongues I couldn't understand. My friend Sam swore he saw faces pressed against the glass of the deck doors. Pale, watery faces with black, hollow eyes, mouthing words silently. None of us could rationalize it. By morning, the windows were clear, the deck empty, but the cold, damp smell of decay lingered in every room. The third night, the house claimed its first victim, figuratively and almost literally. Sam went to the bathroom around midnight and didn't return. We called his name. Nothing. I went to check, and the mirror in the bathroom was fogged, though the room was cold and dry. I wiped it, and the reflection that stared back was wrong. Not Sam, but a tall, shadowed version of him, limbs distorted, face twisted as if underwater. He screamed, a sound that wasn't coming from him in reality, and then the mirror shattered. When we entered, Sam was gone. No footprints, no sign of struggle, just the shattered glass and the lingering stench of salt water. Panic took over. We tried leaving, but the car wouldn't start. Not dead battery, just nothing. We ran down to the beach hoping to flag someone, anyone, but the sand around us began shifting unnaturally. Shapes rose from it, humanoid but grotesque, dripping with dark seawater, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. They didn't move like humans. They glided, hovering slightly above the sand. Whispers turned into shrieks, circling us, echoing off the cliffs. That night, the house seemed to feed on our fear. Doors slammed constantly, walls thumped, and the sound of waves was deafening. Yet the ocean itself seemed to have receded, revealing jagged rocks and dark holes where the water should have been. Shadows twisted in every corner. We huddled together in the living room, but even there the figures appeared, glimpses in mirrors, reflections in windows, stretching their limbs toward us, their faces pale and drowned. By the fourth night, we were hallucinating, or at least it felt that way. The floorboards warped under our feet, the ceilings pulsed like the chest of a breathing monster, and every door led somewhere unexpected. One led to the kitchen, but stepping through it placed us back in the deck facing the cliffs. We realized the house wasn't just haunted, it was alive, a predator trapping us, feeding on our terror. In a final desperate act, we ran for the cliffs, thinking if we could reach the road above, we'd escape. But the sand beneath our feet seemed to shift, trying to pull us toward the ocean. I looked back once and saw the house looming taller than ever, windows glowing faintly like eyes watching us struggle. Figures rose from the tide itself, dragging the edges of our vision, whispering promises of death and despair. I barely made it to the road with my last friend, leaving two behind, swallowed by the house and its cursed cliffs. We never spoke of what happened again. The rental listing disappeared shortly after, replaced by a generic vacation property in another town. But I know it still exists, somewhere along the Oregon coast, waiting for the next fools who ignore the warnings. Sometimes, when I drive along the coast or watch the tide at night, I swear I can hear the whispers, the groans, and the scraping of figures rising from the sand, waiting, patient, hungry.